are the most expensive paintings in the world, based on their actual selling price. We think this is a big, hairy deal. Number 20. Number 1 is a 1954 colored field painted by the abstract expressionist Mark Rothko. In November 2012, the painting sold for $75.1 million at Sotheby's. If there was any thought put into this painting at all, it was probably his wife, who hoped that he wouldn't get any paint on the rug. Number 19. Massacre of the Innocents by Peter Paul Rubin, 1610. Bought by Kenneth Thompson at Sotheby's, London, July of 2002. The biblical story about King Herod sending out his soldiers on one fateful night to slaughter infant boys under the age of 2. With hope of murdering the potential king of the Jews, his soldiers marched into the streets of Bethlehem, and without hesitation they massacred the innocent. But look at all the naked people. What a great time that must have been. Number 18. Le Moulin de la Galette by Pierre-Auguste Renoir. At the time of its sale in 1990, it was the second most expensive painting ever sold. Let's hear what these lovely critics have to say about this painting.
We're in the Musée d'Orsay, standing in front of Renoir's beautiful 1876 Moulin de la Galette.
What really strikes is just how vibrant, how rich the color is. Reproductions simply don't do this painting justice. In a sense, what that does is it invites your eye to move across the surface as a whole. And so he wants us to take in sort of the entirety of the swirling bodies, of the fluctuating light, of all of that.
And at the same time that
knock it off. Number 17. Turquoise Marilyn by Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol painted several versions of the actress Marilyn Monroe, using different colors, sizes, and formats. The artist was fascinated with fame for himself, but also of those that were famous. Warhol painted many other celebrities and iconic people from history. The sex symbol committed suicide in 1962. Warhol painted his Monroe pictures after her death. Turquoise Marilyn sold to billionaire art collector Stephen Cohen for a reported $80 million in 2007. Number 16. False Start by Jasper Johns. Just imagine if it had been a legitimate start. False Start manages to be both clotted and expansive, a field of interlocking patches and passages of red, yellow, and blue, with orange and gray, each of which is named throughout the compositions. In 1988, False Start brought $17 million at an auction at Sotheby's. In the year 2006, the painting was sold to Kenneth C. Griffin for $80 million, making it the most expensive painting to be sold by a living artist. Number 15. Portrait of Dr. Gadget by Vincent van Gogh. Up for auction in 1990 and purchased by a Japanese businessman, this was, at the time, the most expensive painting in the world. The owner, then 75, caused controversy at the time, stating that when he died, he'd have the painting cremated along with him. This was later cleared up, as he claimed that he was only using the expression to show his intense affection for it. Number 14. Francis Bacon Triptych. This is a large triptych painted by the British artist Francis Bacon in 1976. It comprises 3 oil and pastel paintings on canvas. It's the second most expensive Bacon ever sold, after 3 studies of Lucian Freud. I wouldn't hang it in my garage. Number 13. Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer 2 by Gustav Klimt. The only model to be painted twice by Klimt, and sold a few months after the first version. This portrait of Bloch-Bauer was part of a lot in 2006 of 4 Klimt paintings that went to fetch a total of $192 million. She was not a pretty woman. Number 12. Dora Maar or Shot by Pablo Picasso was painted in 1941 during the Second World War, during a difficult period as France at that time was occupied by Nazi Germany. The painting depicts Dora Maar, Picasso's lover, sitting in a chair, and there's a small cat sitting on her shoulder. While such a simple theme for a painting, it has the honor of being one of the most expensive paintings in the world. This particular portrait is one of many that Picasso painted during his 10-year relationship with Dora Maar, which began when Picasso was 55 years old. The painting shows Dora Maar in a three-quarter-length pose, sitting regally in a wooden chair, but her face is really screwed up. The portrait was obtained by Lee and Mary Bloch, art collectors from Chicago, very shortly after it was painted, and was sold at auction for $92.5 million in 2006. Number 11. Garçon à la Pipe by Pablo Picasso. So far the highest price a painting has ever fetched at auction, as the others were all sold privately, and it was the first painting to break the $100 million barrier. It was sold in 2004. The strange thing is that it was never made public as to who expressed such an interest in Picasso's portrait of a smoking Parisian. Number 10. Silver Car Crash by Andy Warhol, 1932. The most expensive work by the most famous legend of pop art, Andy Warhol's monumental Silver Car Crash, was the star of the contemporary art evening sale at Sotheby's. Notice the right side is blank. He should have sold an ad there for Campbell's soup. Number 9. Nude Green Leaves and Bust by Pablo Picasso, 1932. This sensual and colorful masterpiece is the most expensive work by Picasso ever sold at auction. The work, formerly in the collection of Mrs. Sidney F. Brodie, has not been exhibited in public since 1961. And yet here it is here. Number 8. Flag by Jasper Johns, 1958. One night I dreamed that I painted a large American flag, Johns has said of his work, and the next morning I got up and went out and bought the materials to begin it. Those materials included 3 canvases that he mounted on plywood, strips of newspaper, and encaustic paint, a mixture of pigment and molten wax that has formed a surface of lumps and smears. The newspaper scraps visible beneath the stripes and 48 stars lend this icon historical specificity. The American flag is something the mind already knows, Johns has said, but its execution complicates the representation and invites close inspection. A critic of the time encapsulated this painting by asking, "Is this a flag or a painting?" Number 7. The Scream by Edvard Munch, 1895. This iconic work was the most expensive painting ever sold at auction until it was surpassed by Bacon's 3 Studies of Lucian Freud. The work is the most colorful of the 4 versions of Edvard Munch's masterpiece, The Scream, and the only one still in private hands. The Scream has been the target of several high-profile art thefts. The version in the National Gallery was stolen. It was recovered several months later in less than perfect condition. They probably found it taped to a refrigerator door. Number 6. Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer No. 1. Also called The Lady in Gold, is a painting by Gustav Klimt, completed between 1903 and 1907. The portrait was commissioned by the sister's husband, Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer, a Jewish banker and sugar producer. The painting was stolen, however, by the Nazis in 1941. But in 2006, following 8 years of effort by the Bloch-Bauer heirs, the painting was returned to the family. It was sold the same year for $135 million. At the time, a record price for a painting. Number 5. Woman 3 by Willem de Kooning. Another painting sold by Geffen in 2006, but this time bought by billionaire Stephen A. Cohen. It's part of a series of 6 painted by de Kooning in the period of 1951 to 1953, which revolved around the theme of a woman, and is allegedly the only woman still in private hands. And if you think Woman 3 is ugly, you should have seen Woman 1 and 2. Number 4. Number 5. by Jackson Pollock, 1948. Jackson Pollock was an influential American painter and the leading force behind the abstract impressionist movement in the art world. During his lifetime, Pollock enjoyed considerable fame and notoriety. Jackson Pollock's greatness lies in developing one of the most radical abstract styles in the history of modern art, detaching line from color, redefining the categories of drawing and painting, and finding new means to describe pictorial space. Oh, for crying out loud, he just splattered paint on a big canvas. You should see his floor. Number 3. Three Studies of Lucian Freud by Francis Bacon, 1969. Not only the most expensive painting ever auctioned, but also a record for a contemporary work of art. Christie's explained that when this work was painted, the relationship between Freud and Bacon was at its apex. Big hairy deal. Number 2. Le Rêve by Pablo Picasso, 1932. Le Rêve, or The Dream, is one of Picasso's most sensual and famous paintings, depicting his lover Marie-Therese Walter sitting on a red armchair with her eyes closed. In 2006, Steve Wynn agreed to sell the painting to Steve Cohen for $139 million, but the sale was canceled when Mr. Wynn accidentally damaged the work, probably with a jackhammer and a stick of dynamite. Number 1. The Card Player by Paul Cézanne. The exact price of the card players, even the currency of sale, is not known, with estimates from $259 million to $320 million. The Card Player is a series of oil paintings by French post-impressionist artist Paul Cézanne, painted during Cézanne's final period in the early 1890s. There are 5 paintings in the series. The models for the paintings were local farmhands, some of whom worked on Cézanne's family estate. Each scene is depicted as one of quiet, still concentration, men looking down at their cards rather than at each other, with the cards being perhaps their sole means of communication outside of work. One critic described the scene as human still life, while another speculated that the men's intense focus on their game mirrors that of the painter's absorption in his art. These paintings are considered to be the most expensive paintings in the world, but they're not necessarily the most valuable. The most valuable painting in the world is agreed to be the Mona Lisa. The value of the Mona Lisa is said to be more than $1 billion, although many experts contend that this work of art is invaluable. Painted by artist Leonardo da Vinci in 1503, the oil-on-wood painting is housed in the Louvre in Paris. Now that is one big, hairy deal. Thank you so much for watching. We need subscribers, and we hope you'll accommodate us by clicking the link below. And if you click on that little bell, you'll get an alert every time we post a new video. Oh, and by the way, please comment. We love your comments, and we read every one of them. Now take a look at some of the other videos we've done.